Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our super awesome cross-platform collaboration. We've got Rebirth of the Word and Dimensionfold joining forces for world domination. And here we've got Tyrone Ellington from Rebirth of the Word. And of course, I am Ken Goudsward, the host of Dimensionfold. And so here we are today. I think we're going to have a really cool and fun discussion. I don't
Oh, yeah.
even really know what we're going to talk about. So, Tyrone, tell us a little bit about your channel and your website and what you're doing there.
Okay. So Rebirth of the Word, I started my website a couple of years ago. And I created my website because of my curiosity for ancient mysteries, mostly the ancient gods and the stories and the myths that were told about them. And I was actually wounded in Afghanistan. So after a certain amount of time, I was forced to retire, and I had a lot of time on my hands. And at the time, I was of course, I was curious about UFOs and mysteries, gods, religion, stuff like that. I was curious about all that stuff. And, I would watch the documentaries and stuff, and I would always watch the documentaries and hear them say, this is what the ancient text said. This is what the text said. This is what the cuneiform text said. This is what the hieroglyphs said, blah, so on forth and so on. So what I decided to do was I'm that type of person where I would listen to somebody else say something and I would take it and process it and whatnot, but I still have to read it for myself. And
Yeah,
since
amen.
most of those, yep, and since most of those ancient texts are in English form where we can read it in our current language, I took it upon myself to say, you know what? I watched the documentaries. I know that they cut stuff out. I know that they don't let you tell the whole story. I know that. So what I decided to do is I went ahead and bought all the books. The first book I actually bought was Eric von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods. And he had a lot of questions in there that I actually had. I was like, wow, these are some of the questions that I had. But he took those questions and turned them into an extraterrestrial type of theory. Like, could it be possible that it was, extraterrestrials, aliens from outer space and stuff like that? And I took that and I liked it. I mean, his book was written in what I believe in the late 60s. I know it was written before Zechariah Sitchin's books,
Yeah,
before he even wrote The 12th Planet. So I read that book, and then, everybody says online, if you talk about extraterrestrials or the Anunnaki or anything, you got to read Zechariah Sitchin's books. You just have to.
yeah,
You can't know about them and not have known that the most controversial subject came from Zechariah Sitchin when he said that Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru.
right.
And at that time, I didn't know about it. So I just decided, okay, hey, why not read the text that Zechariah Sitchin says? I've already read his books. I've read his books many times. I mean, I love his books. I love his work because at the very end of the day, whether he was right or wrong, I'm able to learn something from my research, just like how he did. He took his stuff, wrote his books, and put the information in his books based on what he understood.
Yeah,
So I take what he says, and then not only do I take what people say about extraterrestrial life, I also take information from people who say that it was just humans that did it. The hunters and gatherers that started in Africa. That's where I wanted to go to, because everybody stops at ancient Mesopotamia. Everybody, whenever anything is said, it's about the myths in ancient Mesopotamia and everything like that. So I wanted to know for myself where the original myths came from.
right,
That's
right.
what my thing was, because everybody says, hey, the cuneiform tablets say this, or the hieroglyphs from the ancient Egyptians say this. There's a big argument about who was the founders of the first civilization. And most
Yeah,
of the
and
time
and a lot of times, like one thing that kind of bothers me is that like guys like Sitchin and Daniken a little bit as well, and many of the other people who are in this field, like you said, they're going to say the texts say this, but they don't always tell you which text they're talking about
Mhm.
and how you can go and find that text to
Yep.
fact check them. And
Yep.
I see that as a bit of a problem because you've got this whole other generation between the late 60s and now where
Mm-hmm.
there's been people who are getting indoctrinated kind of because they're having conclusions given to them without necessarily being able to check the documentation and the evidence if there is any evidence
Right.
behind that.
Right.
So it turns into a very faith-based thing where it's like, oh yeah, I believe Sitchin or I don't believe Sitchin, where it's like, well, who cares about Sitchin in a way? What do he's making a claim that the texts say this. Is he
Right.
correct? How do we know? So we have to look at those texts.
I
So you've been able to track down a lot of the Sumerian texts in
it
terms
that's
of
actually it's actually easy. Yeah, tracking it down is
yeah,
actually really easy. ETCSL, one of my favorite websites. You go there.
yeah.
Let me type it in real quick so I can say the full
Yeah, I
thing. But
can.
it's
I'll put a. I've got a link to it. I'll put
okay.
that
Yeah,
link
see,
up here in
yeah,
the comments.
yeah, I go
Yeah,
there.
that's
All the stuff in there, all of it. Like if
yeah.
it
Those
talks
guys
about the
are
flood story, I go to the simple search, type in flood, go, and it brings me everything that's about the flood story in there, or Inky or Enlil or Anu. But sometimes you do have to be careful because I know some people who say, "Well, I can't find this information." Well, you have to go back to the origins of the word Anu,
right.
or
Right.
Inky. You gotta remember the Sumerian version because Anunnaki doesn't come from the Sumerians. Actually, Anunnaki comes from the Akkadians. The
Yeah, that's right.
Sumerians called them the Anuna.
Right. So it isn't there isn't still, I believe, a one place that you can go to find all that stuff because the
Yeah.
some of that is the Sumerian
Yep.
and the Sumerian scholars are like I mean it's an academic community and they're interested in Sumerian literature, period. They're not
Right.
interested in the Anunnaki necessarily.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that I mean, maybe your website could be a bit of a clearinghouse for where to gather some of that information. I know you've already got a lot of that stuff on there with links to the ECTL. Um,
Mhm.
so as I've been researching it, I got like you, I got a bunch of good texts off of that site. But also I found that I had to go elsewhere for certain other things. Like right now, I'm writing a commentary on the Atrahasis epic, which isn't even on ECTL because it comes from the Akkadian,
Yep.
I believe, or something like that. So yeah, there's all these different traditions where Sumerian turns into Akkadian, turns into Babylonian, and the academic people aren't are a little bit more focused as they're only looking at one side of it. Whereas to get the full picture, I kind of think that we need to be able to look through that entire range of myths as it progressed through different cultures.
I absolutely agree with you. You know, in today's age, in this time frame, the one thing that, for somebody like me, I don't have a college degree. I don't have I do take courses from edx.org. I don't know if you know about that, but that's where you can take classes from prestigious schools like Harvard and stuff like that. I got certificates from them and stuff like that. So I take those courses, but the reason why I say I brought up I don't have a college degree. A lot of times when I share my articles or my podcasts or anything on social media, all the social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Um, I always get that one person that says, well, how can you prove that Sitchin was wrong? Well, one of the one things that I like to do when I write a book, and I pull a book out because this is something that I take very pride in. Um, you see, let me take this background screen off
You know what?
because
Just send me a image later on, and I'll just put it on top here.
okay, you know what? I'll definitely do that.
Okay.
So basically, I have tabs on my books. Okay, I have a whole bunch of tabs on my books of
Hmm.
something that's interesting to me. And when somebody says, "Well, how can you prove Sitchin was didn't say the right information?" Well, he likes to say that modern man in his book was the either the Homo sapiens, the Neanderthals, or whatever. He has different ideas of what a modern man is, but um, when I looked up Homo sapiens, because in the first chapter it's all about evolution. The 12th planet is all about evolution, and
Yeah.
he says in there basically, that that we come from that we're Homo sapiens. We are me and you. We're talking. We're Homo sapiens. What I learned researching that was Homo sapiens sapiens are what we are. We are the subspecies of the Homo sapiens.
Right.
So it's stuff like that. If in the first chapter, if you make a claim, and I'm not trying to debunk them or say anything negative, it's just about how I do my research and find my information.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a claim and say, hey, I believe 100% extraterrestrials came down and built the pyramids, blah, 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 I did this. Okay. I'm not going to say they did or didn't, but if you give me the evidence that you say that, and I go research your evidence and I can't find, or I see that you're missing things, or that you added stuff to create your narrative about the situation, then I'm going to look at you and be like, hey, now I can't really trust what you're saying from this point on. And I have to really dig in everything you say. I have over, probably in that book alone, probably like 60 to 100 tabs on there. And it's just things that I just go back. Like if he says we're Homo sapiens, I don't know anything about, I took a class on anthropology and stuff like that after the fact. But at the time when I read it, I didn't know that we were Homo sapiens. I knew we were Homo sapiens, but I didn't know where did we fall under the evolution chart. So I wanted to go look exactly where we found it in the evolution chart. His idea, the Anunnaki created humans. So I wanted to find the first human-like species like us, the ones that can use their hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and honestly, that's a field that's rapidly changing in the last few years. We've learned a lot about the content of our DNA that includes Neanderthal DNA and Denisovan DNA, and this is all very recent discoveries that are coming from mainstream science. So it's not like woo woo. It's not fringe stuff. It's like this is actual science. But science changes faster than the literature can keep up sometimes, and so there's still a lot of information around that's not necessarily wrong, but maybe a little bit outdated. And so we have access now to a lot of information that Sitchin didn't have.
Yep. I'm glad you said that it's not necessarily wrong. I'm glad you said that, because going back to Sitchin and Anunnaki and stuff, people would say, well, this is what's wrong. And they want to debunk his whole book. I mean, this man has a lot of good information in those books, and you can research them for yourself and see if they're wrong, and you can educate yourself on it. And that's the part of my website. I know when I first started my website, I started off with one article, just one. Like it was the Sumerians, the first civilization article that I wrote, and about every month after that, I added an article to it, because I was learning how to write professionally, trying to get people to read my stuff. Like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. Then I had to make sure I brought the information correctly, because people are going to ask for sources. And then the main thing is I had to make sure that I can grab your attention. Like I can grab your attention and make you like think about what I'm saying. Then I know I did my job. And I'm telling you, I just reached 100,000 views on my website, which is amazing, because I don't have the SEOs or none of that stuff. It's just a basic website. I mean, it's a .com website, but it's
just good content. Like that'll draw people in. And you know what? I really do appreciate that about you, is that you care about quality and you care about truth. So you're not just going to pull a bunch of shit out of your ass. You're going to tell us how you came to that. And so, using the references and backing up claims, and you're not even really making claims most of the time. You're just kind of looking at, hey, here's something interesting. What do we think about this? What could it mean? What might it mean? We don't know.
Exactly. And it's so good. I'm glad you said that, because I'm on social media a lot. I'm not saying that that's my life. I just get on there whenever I have a split second. Like I said, I'm retired, so I have time to get on there and do something. Get something to drink. I drink a cup in the kitchen. I look at my phone and stuff. But that's exactly what my website is that I want to make sure that I tell you what I've read, where I found the information from, and how I found out that it could be something other than what this person is claiming, because of I'm reading outside sources. One thing that I learned about people is the ancient astronaut theories, their ideas and theories, the people are just as bad as some of the people who are religious. And I say that because whenever you present information to either guy, either groups, they don't want to hear it. They don't care. They're stuck in their belief, and that's fine. I'm 100% okay with that. But please don't tell me that I'm wrong, because I know where I found the information. I know what I've read. I have the Hebrew Bible, and I have the Robert Alter version, the one where he translated the Hebrew Bible into what he believes it is, and then he gives a commentary about it. So when somebody says, well, they just pick, I don't know, Genesis 1:1, in the Bible, I'll look what they said on Genesis 1:1, and I would go and grab the Hebrew Bible and look at it. Then I would go to BibleGateway.com and look at all those other Bibles that they have and see how the version actually changed, because a word can make a difference. People don't
Let's
understand
talk about that for a second. Do you happen to have, do you know Genesis 1:1 in Alter's version, or do you have it right handy that we could look at it? Because I also have started working on some translation myself, based on based on some of the stuff that I started uncovering when I was writing UFOs in the Bible, one of my books, and I began to notice that a lot of the Hebrew words, the way that they turn out in the translations that we have in our normal standard English Bibles, whether that be King James through NIV or NASB or whatever version, they're all basically saying the same thing. And so when we read, Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. I read that in Hebrew and I go, wait a minute, that's not really what it says. What it says is, it's not, in the beginning is sort of, I can kind of live with that part, but it's also a little bit hazy, because it actually seems to, the Hebrew word there is very similar to the Sumerian and Akkadian words that starts off the books, the Enuma Elish and also the Atrahasis epic, and they both start with the same word, Enuma, and I think that might be related to the first word that we see in the Hebrew Bible as well. I need to do a little bit more research on that.
I'm glad you said that, because that makes so much. Because have you ever went to BibleHub.com?
Yeah, I'm always on there. I read the interlinear
that's where you
Hebrew.
get the words from, right? That's where you get. See, and I'm glad you said that. That's exactly where I get my information too, because I go to those different, Bible Gateway, Bible Hub, and I got the Hebrew Bible in front of me. I try to see what exactly is said all across each source, I guess.
Yeah. So now get this. So we've only gotten like literally one Hebrew word in, and we're already starting to find some, maybe not necessarily problems, but questions, right? So the next word after that, so there's in the beginning, okay, or Enuma, or however that is. Then we got Elohim, which in the Hebrew is a plural word. And I think a lot of people have talked about this, so this is probably not a big revelation to your listeners or mine. But the Elohim are a group of people, or maybe not necessarily humans. Like they don't seem to be human, because they did something before the earth was around. So but so we've got in the beginning the Elohim, and then the next word in Hebrew is not created. It's a Hebrew word called bara, and what it actually means is separated. So the actual, a better translation of that from the Hebrew is, in an earlier time, or in a time of early, like, I don't know how to really deal with that Enuma, but let's just say in the beginning. That's close. So in the beginning, the Elohim separated the earth and the heavens, or space, which now starts to sound a lot like the Sumerian myths, where you have people who are like, it's more explicit that people are coming to earth, like these Sumerian gods, the Ea, and especially Ea and Anu. So it makes you wonder. So so back to my question, what does that other translation there that you have, how does he handle that? What's this guy's name again?
His name is Robert Alter. Robert Alter, and he has it's just his book. I gotta find.
Is that Altar?
Yeah, Alter. Yep.
Ter. Okay.
Robert Alter, Alter. Yep. Okay, so look, this is what he says. Chapter 1, he says, when God began to create heaven and the earth then was welter and waste and darkness over the deep, and God's breath hovering over the waters, God said, let there be light. And that's in
Yeah, so
quotation marks.
that's a really short, condensed of the first five verses, I think.
Yeah, and then he gives a little commentary at the end, and yeah, it's. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people just, I know when Christians read the Bible, a lot of them like to, the ones that I've been fortunate to be having communication with and talking to and stuff, they tell me to go read the King James version, and I find that interesting because the Geneva version is the one that came before that. And if you want the most accurate information, me personally, I think if it was me, I would think that you would go to the Geneva one, the one that's the most accurate.
Yeah.
Or the one that came before the King James version. Then I don't understand why like you brought up the UFOs and stuff like that, Elohim and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
When we
Mm-hmm.
talk about the Elohim, a lot of people like to say, from my experience, people would tell me that the Elohim was just God, G-O-D with a capital G. One God, that's it. No more, nothing more than that. And I can kind of understand now. I didn't understand why people chose one God, and I kind of understand now more than I do before because my research in it. But I think the reason, this just is my opinion, I think the reason why, because people have told me this, and I'm thinking this is across the whole board. People that their faith is strong. I think people generally pick the religion that they were born in.
Mm-hmm.
If your mom and father was Christian, you're going to be a Christian. If your mom and father was a Catholic, you're going to be a Catholic. Even if it's just one parent or the other, if you only have one parent or whatever the case may be, whatever that household religion is what you're going to grow up to. It's not until later on in life when you um, are more free to explore other religions and stuff like that, and you realize that not everything that's written in the Bible is the truth, and you want to kind of explore other things, and then that's when people go from Christian to maybe practicing Hinduism or Buddhism or something like that.
Yeah.
But I everything you've said, like when you said extraterrestrials, when I read Zechariah Sitchin, he likes to compare the extraterrestrials to Ezekiel or Jacob when they had their visions, right?
Yeah.
But that's the one thing that people don't understand. It was a vision. When Jacob seen that the angels ascending and descending, it says in the Bible he was in a dreamlike state. He was in a
Um,
meditation.
I'm going to challenge that, and I won't even really tell you why because I go into great detail in my book. So,
I'll
but
be ready to buy it and read that.
my personal opinion is that well, I don't even know if there is such a thing as a spiritual trance, but I
Mhm.
know that there's definitely such a thing as people seeing stuff that's weird that they can't explain, and that happens all the time. I mean,
I
you
can get
can
into that
probably look
personally.
you could probably look out your window right now and see something weird that you can't explain. Um, but yeah, so there's a lot of phenomena
Mhm.
happening, and that word doesn't necessarily mean that it's something miraculously
Right,
or supernatural or anything, but it
right,
might
right,
be. Um,
right,
so a phenomena is really it has to do with the human ability to use our senses,
right.
and
Yep,
so to take information in using our five senses and then somehow try to process that. And
right,
we don't necessarily know how to process all the information that we're getting.
right,
Um,
right.
so yeah, there's definitely some weird stuff happening in the world, and so
Mm-hmm.
I try to figure out somewhere between taking that, even the current phenomenon that we see happening, such as
Mm-hmm.
ufology, where people appear to be witnessing ships
Right.
in the sky or whatever, and I'm not saying that they are or they aren't, but I'm
Right.
saying that there's a phenomenon. And then how do we mesh that up with everything else we know? And so I kind of read um, use that lens to look at the story of Jacob and Ezekiel and Isaiah and Daniel and Abraham and Moses and
Mm,
all of these guys who are telling us a story about something weird that they saw. So it's a
right.
phenomenological storytelling narrative is all that's happening. None of these guys are trying to tell us, look, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
All of
Right.
these, the ancient forefathers, all they were ever doing was saying, hey, something weird just happened to me. Let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
And, in none of those cases are they explaining it.
Yeah.
Especially before Moses. So in the Genesis narratives, there's a lot of weird things happening, and they don't really have any kind of framework to put it on. When Moses comes along, one of the first things that happens to him is a really weird thing that we have come to call the burning bush. But
Hmm.
as I describe in my book, it's not a bush at all, but there's some kind of weird experience phenomenon with involving fire and light and heat and sound, and weird
Yeah.
stuff happening, and somebody's talking to him, and that he Moses goes, what, who are you? And the voice says, I am what I am, which
In his head, right?
we have turned into a word, Yahweh, and we
Yep.
have turned that into a name. But it's not really a name. It's somebody basically, it's almost the opposite of a name. It's like, who are you? I am who I am. I am what I am. It's like almost skirting the question. I'm not going to tell you my name. And yet, even though that was the intent, we've done the exact opposite and turned it into a name. And then we take that name and we project it backwards through time onto Genesis, where it never appears. And we even go so far as to say that Yahweh created the earth. And we say that Genesis 1:1 says so, but it says nothing of the sort. It doesn't
Right. Right.
mention Yahweh. It doesn't even mention creation, because
Right.
the
Right.
word
Right.
bara means separate. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of strange things that are going on, and there's a lot of things that we have stopped thinking are strange because we've been told by our parents and our teachers and our deacons and our pastors that, hey, this is what that means, so it's really not strange, so don't worry about it. You don't really have to try and figure it out. We know the answer. No, we don't. We don't even come close to knowing the answer.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I was very confused as a kid when it came to religion and what school was telling me. I would go to church on Sunday and be told God created everything, everything's in God's hands. Okay. And then I would go to church on Sunday or a church on Sunday. I would go to school on Monday after church and be told that um, the planet is about 14 billion years old. And I was just taught the day before, probably less than 24 hours, because I'm being taught in class in the morning
Mm-hmm.
that the Earth is actually only 6,000 years old if you go according to what the real the scholars say about religion
Right.
in the Christian Bible. Um, I've heard people many times, even to this day. I mean, people really believe that the Earth was only created 6,000 years ago. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not the one that has the scientific know-how to be able to say yes or no how to do that. But when this PhD guy or woman goes out there and surveys the Earth, and they find out that these rocks were probably about 4 billion years old, like that. Um, what did I say? 14 billion years old. The universe is 14 billion years
Yeah.
old. The Earth
Yeah.
is 4 billion years old. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
And
4.6.
yeah, 4.6, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I did say that backwards. But when they say that, when I go to school and hear that the universe was 14 billion years old and the Earth is, 4 billion years old, I'm confused about what am I supposed to believe, because you're not supposed to believe anything outside of that Bible. At least that's what I was being taught. Like, what's in that Bible is true. You can't ask questions. You can't, you know, question, if this was right or wrong, because it was a sin. You would go to hell. Like, I mean, this
Right.
is I'm a little kid, you know what I'm saying? I'm being told that I can go to hell because I'm being told by my teachers in school that the earth is 4 billion years old and the universe is about 14 billion years old. And then I'm being told that in church is not even 10,000 years old. And
Right.
I'm getting, you know, I remember I put, you know, it was a question on the test, you know, how old is the world or the earth? And I put 6,000 years because that's what I was taught in church. I didn't want to go to hell. You know what I mean? I don't want to go to hell. I mean, I'm a little kid. Man, the way they told me hell was, man, that's not something you want to tell a kid because that will scar them. You know, so
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay, you know, I'm gonna put 6,000 years old because that's what they say. God rested on the seventh. You know, I get
Right.
that answer
Right.
wrong. And now I'm like, well, who am I supposed to believe? Am I supposed to believe my church or am I supposed to believe my science teacher? Which one am I supposed to believe? So that's
Right.
what,
Well,
and
and
that kind
the
of,
thing is, they're both doing the same problem. So your science teacher is making the exact same mistake that your pastor is making, because
mm-hmm,
both of them are just going, well, somebody taught me this at seminary, or somebody taught me this at teacher college, and this is what I'm supposed to say. But they don't know why. I
right, right.
guarantee that your science teacher does not know everything about tree ring dendrology and geological eras and sedimentation and all the ways that we know that we can indicate
Mm-hmm,
why there's just so many different pieces of evidence that it's
right,
really
right.
complicated. I wouldn't expect anybody to really understand all of the various branches of science that go into that. But the
Right.
thing is, they all agree, right? So there's all of these different um, points of different lines of evidence that are all leading to the same thing.
Mm-hmm,
And so I think at least with science, we have this paper trail and this almost like you could say it like almost like a tree of knowledge where there's all these different leaves on a tree or roots or whatever that all come together and lead to this conclusion
right.
that yeah, actually we know pretty solidly that yeah, Earth is 4.6 billion years old, and here's why. And so, okay, so why? So you can ask why, and then you can get an answer, and you can ask why about that, and you can get an answer, and you can keep drilling in and drilling in and drilling in. But the science teacher doesn't do that, right? So he's going, he could, that information's there, but it's going to take like a couple of classes to do that. I think it's easier if I just tell these kids this is the way it is, right?
Mm-hmm,
And that's the same thing that the pastor's doing is he's just telling it like he thinks it is. So both of
mm-hmm.
these guys are throwing away the evidence and just going, well, just listen to me because I said so, right?
Yep.
And that's the same mistake that Sitchin made, is that like a lot of people will just not listen to Sitchin because he doesn't provide evidence. Um, and
That's it.
some of the things he says are really crazy sounding. And
Yeah.
if you don't have evidence, why should you believe him? You shouldn't. You shouldn't just blindly believe anybody, no matter what they tell you. And that's true of people who are telling you because the Bible said so, or somebody says because the Sumerian text said so, or somebody says because science. None of those are a good explanation. So if there are ways to drill into it, that's the stuff that we need to do, and that's what I love about what you're trying to do on your website. That's kind of that's what I see as you and a lot of other people too are as there's this whole new um, like I guess you could say like a whole new generation of people who are just really digging into drilling into that knowledge. And yeah, it really is a rebirth of the word.
Yeah, I'm glad you've seen it like that because that's exactly, you know, the word is from whatever religion is you believe in the God. The God, that God's word is what is. Nothing else is. I'm trying to recreate what that word really means because a lot of people don't understand what etymology and semantics does to
Yeah, yeah,
believing stuff. You know, um, today's definition for a scholar is somebody who has a degree, a college degree or some sort, or who is something with college. And an archaic version of a scholar is anybody who's seeking knowledge. That's it. That's all a scholar was. So if I take what a scholar was in archaic times to today, I wouldn't be considered a scholar today because I don't have that college degree. I do have certificates, but I don't have that college degree. But if I go to use the archaic version, I am definitely a scholar because I know where to find the information. One thing about me is I can back up everything I say. Everything I say, everything that I write, I back it up. When I write my articles, I read it back, like before I even publish it, I read it like, say you're reading it and trying to debunk me. Like I'm trying to debunk myself on what I'm saying. So that way, when I present my information, when you say, oh, I can debunk that, in the next paragraph, you're going to read, hey, this is what I found out from that. So if you stop at that point where you think you can debunk me, I've already debunked myself and went to the next paragraph and showed you how I found that information and where I found it. You know,
right.
Michael S. Heiser, Dr. Michael S. Heiser, made a whole entire website called Sitchin is Wrong. He has a PhD. He can read Hebrew. He knows how the Sumerian text. He has a whole entire website that he can debunk Sitchin. So,
but the funny thing there is a lot of times Heiser himself throws away the evidence because I mean, I haven't read all of his stuff, but I've certainly seen a few sections of Heiser basically just going, well, Sitchin's wrong because he's an idiot, or almost to that degree where he doesn't agree with his conclusion and he resorts to name calling.
Yeah, and I've seen that. And you know what? This is one thing that Dr. Michael S. Heiser says on his website. If you go and see why Sitchin says the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru, is usually because he considers cylinder seal VA243 as the seal that shows the 12 planets, or what he calls the 12 planets, with planet Nibiru being out there on the far side. Now, if you go research, cylinder seal VA243, everybody knows it's that one that he's holding in his hand. It's the big tablet or seal or whatever they want to call it in his hand. And Michael S. Heiser says that little circle with the rays around it, he said that's not the sun. Now, this is what, thousands of years ago. He thinks this is when they indicated, Sitchin indicated that they considered this the sun. Now, I'm a 4-year-old kid. I have kids. When I tell my kids to draw the sun, without them even knowing what the sun is, they draw it exactly how Sitchin presented it. So it makes me wonder, like, he's on the track. Like I love his information, but then he goes, left with it and it says this can only mean Nibiru, when and according to Michael S. Heiser, Dr. Michael S. Heiser, and from what I understand, that is the first time the sun has probably been indicated as a sun, or that's the first time that somebody has decided that was a sun. We don't know what the ancients thought of back then. I mean, we can only go off of what somebody's opinion is. Michael S. Heiser, he says he can read the text. He's reading the text and translating it into what he believes it says. We don't know exactly what it says. So when somebody says,
does Heiser support the idea that the Sumerians knew about the planets revolving around the sun, or does he say that they did not know that?
He says they did, but there was certain ones that they didn't know. They didn't know them all, basically. And that's what a lot of people say. Sitchin says that they knew all the planets, but and I'm going to get into that after this real quick. He says that Sitchin says that, this is basically where it came from. His idea is the sun and, whatnot. But he doesn't, I don't know. He's kind of backwards or how can I say it? He's kind of back and forth with it when he believes where the Anunnaki came from, because he doesn't actually give his idea of where the Anunnaki came from. In most cases, he just says he doesn't really know for sure. He kind of hints to other things, but I won't speak on that because I don't know what he actually means.
Yeah. Okay.
But what I will say is that I do know that the Sumerians considered a lot of things, everything stars. It started off as stars. It wasn't planets and stuff like that. That came later, identifying the planets. But one thing that I did learn is I have a telescope, and I actually did a little research on, telescopes. Did you know that people were trying to look in the sky through a certain type of a telescope since the beginning of mankind. Like there's ways you can make glass on Earth naturally. Like I didn't know that there's glass that you can make naturally, and I know that there's certain ways that you can use that glass or film or whatever they. I don't know exactly what type of um, texture it is, but they said that man, I wish I would have said that there's a telescope that they think that these ancients were using to identify these planets. And I just seen this. I seen this like a couple of days ago, like at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It was like one of the last things I seen. I said I'll dig into it. I wrote it in my book or whatnot. I didn't write the names of it, but I just wrote, what I need to research. And there's actually been people trying to create certain types of telescopes. That's why you have a lot of times people going to the mountains and trying to use these trying to view the sky, because it's much easier to do that at a certain height of a mountain. Like I didn't know there's so much science to how they were trying to figure this out. And yes, Dr. Michael S. Heiser, he doesn't give any indication of exactly, or at least I haven't heard one yet. And I can't find it on his website that he says, hey, this is where the Anunnaki came from. This is more like, Sitchin's idea. And most of the people who follow Sitchin just regurgitate exactly what he says they came from.
Yeah.
Planet.
Yeah. So that's the thing is if you want to follow Sitchin, you have to follow Sitchin because you can't follow the evidence because the evidence is buried somewhere. Like Sitchin probably has some notebooks. Sorry, say that again.
You said that perfectly. I like that. Absolutely.
So I read Sitchin and I was like, well, I'm not going to just simply believe what you're saying. So I think that the cylinder seal is an interesting picture, but to me, there is no way that you can draw any kind of conclusion from looking at a picture. So so I wanted to find out where exactly he got this Nibiru idea. And I still don't know what he's quoting because he doesn't tell me. But in the Enuma Elish, which is one of the Sumerian, Babylonian, and Akkadian. So it's the Enuma Elish version that we have is actually in Akkadian, and it comes from the, I believe it was one of the documents that was uncovered in the library of Ashurbanipal, which was this huge archaeological find from about 100 years ago, where we suddenly discovered this amazing treasure trove of all these cuneiform documents. And like it's wild how much stuff was in there. So I think that anyway, my point is I read the Enuma Elish and it does talk about Nibiru, but and I wrote a book on this too, which I'll flash up over top of my face here. So if you go check out this book, what I do is I step through the text of the Enuma Elish in English. I don't know how to read Akkadian, but there's plenty of scholars who have already done the translation. So I've taken some of those translations, which are open source, and I've read through them, and also applying my phenomenological framework and also what I know as a computer science degree. Like I have a computer science degree and I know how to write software and I know how to make databases, and a lot of the stuff that they're talking about in there has a very high-tech kind of a feel to it. So using kind of those ideas, trying to interpret, well, Zechariah claims that these guys came from space. Okay, so they must have had a spaceship. So how do you fly a spaceship? It implies that you need certain technologies. You need to have navigation systems. You need to have engines, generators, all this kind of stuff. They might not be the same technologies that we use, but those technologies have to do some of the same types of jobs because there's certain requirements for flying through space. You have to know where you're going. How do you do that? Well, you can navigate by looking at the stars. You can navigate by looking at constellations. And so most of what I'm examining in my commentary of the Enuma Elish is the idea of navigation systems and the constellations that we now know as the zodiac, and
Hmm.
how basically what that story seems to be telling us is that Ea came from. It seems like it's not totally clear where he came from, but it sounds like it was somewhere near the galactic core, and he has come out, and he had to recalibrate their databases to put in the new coordinates to match with the constellations as they look like in our area of space. Because of course,
Right.
as you're traveling through space, the stars are all shifting. There's no
Mm.
such thing as that's constellation that's going to stay there forever. So you have to
Right.
recalibrate. And that's what it sounds like is happening there. And Nibiru is mentioned only once in that book, and it's
Mm.
in the context of this system and how it ties in with the other constellations of the zodiac. So I explain why, but basically the conclusion that I come to in there is that Nibiru is not a planet at all, but rather it's a mathematical point in space that if you are on Earth and you look up in the sky and you see the Milky Way, because if it's dark at night, you can actually see the Milky Way kind of going across.
Mhm.
There's a spot there, and then if there's on the other plane, which is the Earth's rotational plane,
Mhm.
which we call the celestial equator. It's not a real thing, but there's an imaginary line in space that it looks like a line from our point of view. So these are both mathematical constructs, and Nibiru is simply the spot at which the galactic, or sorry, where the equatorial, um, I can't think of the word, but basically that imaginary line around the Earth as it spins, and
Mhm.
where that line crosses the center line of the Milky Way galaxy. So it's important in terms of calibrating their database to local Earth coordinates,
Right.
and that's all that Nibiru is. So it kind of makes sense to say that someone comes from Nibiru if they had to pass out of the somewhere near the galactic core or anywhere in the galaxy almost,
Mhm.
uh, anywhere in the Milky Way to come to Earth way out here in the spiral arm, you come basically through Nibiru.
Right. Right.
So that's
And
my
that,
take on it.
and that makes sense. That's from what I read. That's what many ideas come from. Nibiru is different things. I know the the word Nibiru is actually an Akkadian term, and it's a city in ancient Mesopotamia. It's actually a city. So, and I'm glad you brought up the Enuma Elish and you brought up, extraterrestrials and stuff like that. Um, I do believe there are extraterrestrials out there. For our universe to be 14 billion years old, the Earth to be about 4.6 billion years old, um, that's a lot of years. Okay. And you said math earlier. Mathematics is very important. If mathematics is as correct as many people say it is, we are not the only ones in this universe. Mathematically, there has to be others. Mathematically, it has to be others.
Right.
Um, there's
And
no
math,
doubt in.
the ancients knew that math was important. Um,
Yep.
so if you look back at ancient Egypt, there's we put a lot of weird spins on ancient Egypt, and we basically
Yeah.
think that that they're simple-minded pagans who like to worship a multitude of gods. Well, that's not really what's going on, because the gods in ancient Egypt are more like concepts. So
Mhm.
if you went to university today, you would have to choose a major. Are you going to
Mhm.
study chemistry, biology, physics, math, computer science, political science, blah blah blah, all these different things? That's if we were to suddenly say that well, political science is a god, or history is a god. That's exactly the same thing that's going on, because in the minds of the earlier Egyptians, I mean, I'm not saying this is the case like all the way through. I mean, at times it definitely became a religion, and it was hugely religious for probably 1,000 years or more. But I'm saying before that, the original concepts were not this anthropomorphized uh, kind of like theology. That's not what it was about at all.
Right.
And one good piece of evidence for that is that one of the one of the gods that sort of escaped becoming anthropomorphized a little bit was a term that they have in ancient Egypt called Maat,
Right.
Maat, which
Mhm.
is the exact same word that we still use for mathematics. Mathematics is Maat. It's the exact extension of this Egyptian concept, which is the laws or the order, and it's very much that's what math is still about. Math is
Right.
all about the order and the beauty of the universe, and if you follow math, everything works out okay. And that's
Hmm.
exactly the same thing that the Egyptian concept was. So I also think that that's what the laws of Egypt and also the laws of Moses were based directly upon these Maat principles of Egypt. So the mathematics has been there since the beginning,
Right.
but we've lost its original identity and its original kind of meaning and sort of turned it into like a bastardized version of some
Mhm.
kind of weird, I don't know, like what do all of this stuff that we have that turns into law and turns into politics and turns
Mhm.
into religion and turns into whatever, all of these things that are certain rules are really all based on this prior concept of math, which was very scientific and very mathematical and has
Right.
lost a lot of that truth.
And that's, you know, like I was saying, this, when it comes to math, if it is as accurate as a lot of people say it is, I'm not good at math. I'm really horrible at math. That's like my worst subject. I'm good with everything else, but when it comes to math, it's just bad. But what I learned is that from the beginning of mankind, we have been using math. When you look at your fingers, if you're saying, "Hey, I want two apples," and you didn't have a language, you would say something like two, and you would point at whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the beginning. Our
I literally had to do that when I was in Quebec last month because
Mhm.
I don't speak very much French. So I'm just like, hey, I need
Yeah,
these many.
yeah, and that's
It
how you
works.
would communicate. That's exactly how you would communicate. That's the beginning of math. We knew that if we wanted something, we have most people have 10 fingers, 10 toes. So you're able to use your fingers and your toes to determine what it is you want. I mean, your hands. I mean, I've read this book from Dr. Supreme Understanding, and he goes into details about this. But he basically talks about, that when man was roaming the earth, when they were, migrating from place to place, um, they used the moon as a way to travel, because the moon in those days in Africa, if I'm living in Georgia right now, where it's like 90 to 100 degrees here. I love going fishing. I have a nice boat. I go bass fishing. I either have to go either at 4 o'clock in the morning and leave by 12 in the afternoon and come home because it's too hot and the fish aren't biting, or I would have to go later at night, like 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and come back, during the night hours. And the reason why I bring that up is because if the hunter gatherers of that time was using the moon to travel, you would have to think about why would they need to know when the full moon is out or when the moon came out or the 30 days or whatever. They would have to know that because of the survival of their group. Now, when I say survival, we know that women have menstruals, and there are animals who are attracted to when a women are having menstruals. They can bring, um, certain types of animals to your camp or whatever that can, hurt the camp and, tear up the camp and stuff. So you would, a woman mathematically, if you want to protect your tribe, the women, the children, and everybody else, you would have to make, because we know from what I understand, when a group of women are together in a close proximity, their menstruals usually line up around about the same time. And using that mathematically, you're able to migrate from one place to another using the moon, the stars, the way, everything is in the sky. You're able to use that as a way to keep your camp, your tribe or whatever surviving during the beginning stages of humanity, of humankind.
Right.
This is not something that people that I take lightly. I really believe that women were the first to mathematically figure out how the moon moved, because it had to go with their menstruals. It had to, and it had to work with their survival, because not only that, the birth of children, you don't want to travel hundreds of miles with pregnant women, hunter and gathering. For one, they can't stay on their feet that long enough to do that, because they're the extra weight, the extra, the sun, the moon, everything plays a concept in how they're moving. So when it comes to mathematically, when a woman says, whatever, I can't remember what bone it is, but there's actually a bone that actually has the mathematical equations of how the moon came to be in Africa because of these women. I actually wrote an article on it. And it's pretty interesting, because when you say that, like when people say, when you were talking about gods earlier, there's many definitions of gods. I mean, most people only know the definition as far as religion, but just like you said, in Egypt, a bull could be represented as a god. That's actually what got Moses upset and made him throw down the Ten Commandments the first time, the one that God himself supposedly etched, because he came down from the mountain and seen his people representing a bull calf. They were worshiping that, and that made him mad. So the definition of God, it's different, and I truly believe that mathematically, like when I look at gods and stuff, like I try to look at like let's look at Enki or Pa. Let's look at them, or we could look at Thoth, for example. Thoth is supposed to be the creator of the pyramids. That's a better example. He's supposed to be the creator of the pyramids, and he's also supposed to be Ningazida in the Sumerian text. That's who he's supposed to be equivalent to. Now, Thoth also had created a new calendar when he went from, and this is from what I've read, when he went from Africa to Egypt, from Africa there to Mesopotamia. You remember supposedly he's supposed to build another calendar. And I'm glad you brought that up earlier about the mathematics, because it seems like our calendar has changed numerous times throughout our history. A pope, I read in Sitchin's book, and I have to do more research on it because I have it tabbed and I actually find it interesting. But he says a pope actually changed the date sometime in the 1500s, I believe, in October.
Yeah, twice that happened.
Yeah, he changed the date to make it fit his narrative and fit what they were trying to do at that time. Yeah. And the reason why I said earlier, if mathematics is as good as it is, that just means that somebody at that time frame found an error in their mathematics and said, hey, maybe we need to change this, because mathematics is always changing. Better technology, better things helps us better with, when I was growing up, we didn't have Common Core. I don't even know what Common Core is today. I mean, this is this new thing, and I guess in America where they're teaching math a different way. And the way I grew up and learned math was differently than the way that that they're teaching it now. Now, a lot of people don't like the way it is now, but I was using the now way when I was younger. The problem was my teachers didn't understand that. And I was actually getting faulted for it because I couldn't prove the way I got my answers the way they created it. Mathematics, this is universal language. 1 + 1 = 2 everywhere across the world, no matter how you put it. That's from what I understand. 1 + 1 = 2. And you can't change that. You can change how to write it, There's
Yeah,
different
well,
different.
so that's the thing is that, and that's kind of the basis of the scientific method, is that it has to be, in order for science to prove something, you have to be able to um, say what you did, uh, and say what happened, say what your results were,
Right.
and then you can pass that information to somebody else in a different place, different time, and if they do the same things that you did, they're gonna get the same results that you have. So
Right.
it has nothing to do with belief. It has
Hmm.
nothing to do with supposition. It has nothing to do with presumption. Um, it has everything to do with observation. So again, it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenological approach where we're using our five senses, and
Hmm.
it also includes an extra step, which is documentation. So phenomenology plus documentation equals science, and it's highly reproducible. And when you include mathematics into that mix, that is the only way that we are able to do any of the amazing things that we've done in the last 100 years with technology and all the advances in computation and material science and spacefaring. Um, the sending one rocket into orbit and having it come back to Earth is absolutely impossible to do unless you have a very good understanding of the math and the physics principles behind it. And it works every time. So if you don't believe in science, uh, turn on your TV to the next time NASA does a launch, or SpaceX does a launch, or look it on YouTube. The very fact that that thing actually worked and that ship went up, even if it explodes halfway up, the point is still valid. If they could get that thing off the ground, then science is your friend. Also, if you own a refrigerator, science is your friend
Yep.
because you can't do refrigerators without science.
Yep.
Uh,
And you know, you brought that up as a good point. You can't do certain things without science. A lot
mhm,
of people, and I say a lot of people because it's from my personal experience. This is not, you know, just like when I write my articles, it's all from my experience, what I've come in contact with, what I've learned, what I've researched, what somebody told me. You know, I do all that, and a lot of people would say that science is not accurate, which is 100% true. Nothing is as 100% accurate as you want, as the individual person that's looking for the truth. It's never going to be 100%. You have to pick and choose, you know, um, what is. First of all, if somebody says that the Anunnaki came from a different planet, well, first of all, who was the first ones to say that? That should be your first question. It's not
mhm,
who said it, it should be who's the first person who said it. And then the next question is, how do I find out how to get in contact or find that information from the person that it originated from? Because um if we have 20, if I have 20 people lined up, right, and I tell the first person a story, okay, a 10-20 second story, by the time it gets down to the last person, I guarantee you that story will have things added and taken away from it. I've witnessed it. I've done it myself in a controlled environment. I, this is from my personal experience. I can
mhm,
tell, you can tell somebody to watch one of your old YouTube videos, watch it, and then tell somebody else, and there will be things added and there will be things taken away. But the core of the information is you. You're the one that have the information. So if I have the ability to find that ancient text, if I have the ability to read it in the English form that I'm used to, that I can read in, I have to break down each and every word that leads to it. Because if you're telling me that the Anunnaki came from a planet named Nibiru, first thing I'm going to look is, okay, who was the first one that told you this? Then I'm going to look at, okay, where did you get the information from? Then I'm going to analyze all that stuff all those two things together, and then I'm gonna create more questions for myself. Once I get to the question where I feel more comfortable, where I know the information, I understand it better, then that's when I'll come to you and say, hey, look, this is what I found. Of course, you can't do that on social media, because if once, you know, it's kind of hard. You either have to comment then, or comment or never comment at all. But the point is, a lot of people want to comment then and don't even want to research the stuff. So I get into this whole, debate with them, and I'll be like, "Well, did you know that the word Anunnaki isn't even a Sumerian? It's a Akkadian term?" And they'll tell me, "No, I didn't know that." And I say, "Well, start there." And they'll be like, "Well, Sitchin always says it was Anunnaki." And I said, "Yes, that's true. He does say that. And yes, the Sumerians lasted longer than what many people want to like. They didn't just up and leave when the Akkadians came in. They integrated with the Akkadians. Okay, they became the Akkadians, and so forth, to the Hittites and the Babylonians, and all those people. Their culture carried on. Maybe not their beliefs, but the culture itself still carried on. Right. And I try to tell people that the most important thing to do is, if you believe something wholeheartedly, if you absolutely 100% believe that the Anunnaki came from the planet Nibiru, then you, as a person who believe that, I would think that you would actually want to know more about it than just what somebody else is telling you. Especially if I'm telling you, hey, just go on etcsl.com and not .com, but ETSL. You say you're gonna put the thing up. Search it. Just search it. Find the origins. Because some people have told me, well, some people will say like, I can't find the Anunnaki on that simple search. I said, it's not the Anunnaki, it's the Anuna. So you're not going to find it. And when they say they can't find it, they think that I'm lying. And I'm like, no, you have to type in the origins of the word. And there's ways, and they have simple search, advanced search, word list, sign list, and full catalog. So basically you have to dig in their website. Not only can you read, the ancient text from that website and see for yourself if Sitchin made it up or if he exaggerated or not. And the only reason why I harp on Sitchin a lot is, and I have to say this, is because most of the people who believe in an Anunnaki believe Sitchin was the one who said it. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, I've read from books from and watched interviews from Billy Carson. He wholeheartedly believes that Sitchin was on the right path. Giorgio Tsoukalos, same person, believes Zechariah. These are people who are making shows, that's trying to share knowledge. And I'm telling you, I used to love that show, Ancient Aliens. Man, I used to watch that show religiously. I used to watch it because it was
is. Well, but that's the thing, is it has become a religion, because a religion doesn't need to use evidence. A religion is about passing of knowledge, and I'll use that term loosely, or however you want to take that. It is knowledge. Whether it's true or not is beside the point. But there's some knowledge or some information that's being passed along. But what's not being passed along is a lot of times is any evidence whatsoever, or if there's a little bit of evidence, it's highly circumstantial, or maybe sketchy or whatever. But even if there is evidence, what is lacking is the methodology that you can reproduce that same evidence and that same line of reasoning and get to the same conclusion. So that's the scientific method. So in my books, and I have a science degree, in my books, you are a scientist. So, you can say you never went to college, whatever. I don't care. You're a scientist, and you're definitely a scholar, because right now you are doing the research that is light years ahead of all these other people who are just going to regurgitate what somebody told them, because they're treating ancient alien theory as a religion. But you're looking at it as a scientist and going, okay, well, what can we actually know about this? And I think that's really what we need to start. We all need to be doing that. And of course, not everybody has time to do that, or the inclination or energy to do all that. Right. So, but you and I, and, people like us, who have the skills to do it, and have the means and the technology and the time and the energy, and we're doing that. And that's why I think, it's not presumptuous to say that we can do better than Sitchin, because we're standing on, the information that he gave us, and then we're bringing to it that scientific method and that mathematical approach and the phenomenological and the etymological, and we're bringing in all these other things and transparency. That's the biggest thing that Sitchin lacks, is transparency. So he acts like a cult leader. He just says a thing and people are supposed to believe him. No, sorry, man. I'm not down with that. Like, you want to be a religious zealot for Sitchin, that's fine. But I need more than that. I need some kind of evidence, right?
There are people making, and I don't care how much money anybody makes, but there are people actually making millions off of just sharing the same thing over it. And people who, like you said, like me and you, if we have the time to research it, if we have the time to do it and we share it to people, a lot of times many people don't want to hear it. And it's not, I said Billy Carson and Giorgio Tsoukalos, when I first watched the first episode of Ancient Aliens, I want you to go watch it. The very first episode, I think it was in March or something like that, 2009. I actually have it pre-recorded, a part that Giorgio Tsoukalos started. And this is actually what started my whole, hey, I got to research everything somebody says type thing.
Right.
Okay. So Giorgio Tsoukalos said he was in the pyramids one time, and that there was a time when it was so dark that they needed some type of light. Okay. And they didn't have any light or any flashlights or anything like that. So Giorgio Tsoukalos says that he pulled out a lighter. He was like, okay, no problem. I'll just flick on my lighter and they'll have light so they can see what's inside the pyramids. Now I want you to understand something. He said he tried to flick it on and the lighter didn't ignite. That means there was not enough oxygen for the lighter to ignite, right? Now, what I researched is, and I want people to research this, is how much, I already know the answer, but how much oxygen is needed for a human to breathe and not have any kind of, lack of oxygen, okay? Then I want you to Google how much oxygen is needed to start a fire. And you'll see that if he couldn't light that lighter, he wouldn't be able to talk, move, or even do anything inside that pyramid, because it takes more oxygen to breathe than it is to ignite a fire. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, so I love that show too, and I've seen half of their episodes at least out of this. What is it, 20 seasons or whatever?
Man, I watched every single episode.
I love it, but you're right. Like, the producers of that show are not trying to teach us; they're trying to entertain us. And they are doing a damn fine job of doing that. But that information, in some ways, the way that they're presenting it is very harmful, because they will say stuff that's just not true. And you know what? Of course, we're not always going to be right all the time. There's probably a lot of stuff that I'm saying that's probably not right. But I have a bit of an issue with willingly ignoring fact checking. Like, there's some really simple stuff on there where they will say a number, like, I can't give a specific example, but I've noticed this so many times on the Ancient Aliens show, is that they'll tell a number and it's usually multiplied by 10. Like, for some reason, I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or if they're just super lazy. But like, there's all of these things where it's just like, if something was 4,000, they're going to say 40,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, like, don't you care at all about accuracy? I mean, okay, maybe it sounds great to make it, over exaggerated, but to me, that's problematic.
You said perfect. You say so many things perfectly. I love the way that you present your information, because for my website, podcast, and everything, I'm trying to make it as organic as possible. A lot of people put too much money in trying to make it look so professional, and that's cool and all, but I like to be organic. I want you to know me for who I am. Okay, I want my personality to come out. Okay. And my personality is like you said, hey buddy, I can't just go along with what you're saying type thing. I gotta, you gotta show me, you gotta prove it to me. I don't ever try to down ancient aliens. I know they cut stuff. I have the book that Kevin Burns right in front of me
Mhm.
talks about aliens. I mean, the first episode is actually that book. This is how deep I got into it. I can't say somebody's wrong without researching the material for myself and then also being able to provide how I found that information. And what I like to do is I like to use the information that that person said. So if you say the Sumerian said it, then I'm going to go to ETCSL and type it in. Type in whatever you said because it's easy to search it. If it's not in there, then then it came from somewhere else, and then you're creating evidence for your narrative.
Right.
But what I like to do is I actually I love that show. I watch that show. What I want to do is I want to do a podcast on every one of those shows now,
Oh
because
yeah.
I'm doing a podcast now on every book that I've read. I just started that. It's not like a breakdown of everything that's good or bad or right or wrong or anything. It's just what I found personally interesting, like what I found interesting, what I put my tabs to, and I'm gonna go through each one of those tabs, and I'm gonna talk about, hey, this is what this person said in this book, and this is what I found using their research from the sources that they say in the back of the book. Because I also go through the back of the book and look at their sources.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to just look at, like I said, some people would just go to ETCSL and search that, but they won't search, let's say Sitchin quoted Michael S. Heiser. I would go to
Right.
Michael S. Heiser, what he was saying. My thing is that in today's world, people like me, if we present information and we don't have a college degree, people will write you off. Don't even care. If you have a degree but it's not in that field, like Zachariah Sitchin, some people will listen, some people won't. Sitchin didn't have a degree in ancient history or anything like that, and he started off as a journalist. So, and we know what journalists like to do. They like to exaggerate and bring all effects to their audience. So I take all that, and what I like to do is I not only like to research their sources and their book. I also like to research the author, the scholar, the person themselves, because, like you said earlier, from 1960s, there wasn't that much information being given out to the public about any of this stuff. So people were basically only knowledgeable on what they could have at that time. We can't pick up a Kindle book and just download a book or go on the web and find ancient texts. Like you can go to sacred text.com and they have, the text that you can read, like the Book of Enoch and stuff like that, if you don't want to buy that version or anything. But today, for some reason, people, they only require evidence, hardcore evidence, from people who didn't write these type of books. Like you said you wrote books before, right? So you have this under your belt. You have an audience. You have people that read your material. When I first do my book, it's going to be a lot of people are going to know who I am based on because where I'm going to promote it at, my social media sites and all that stuff. But the people who don't know, they're going to be like, well, the first thing they're going to be is like, what's his educational level at? Where did he get his information from? Like, why should we believe him type thing? And that's the kind of barrier.
Which is really funny, because if you ask literally anyone, hey, what's the quality of the educational system in America or in Canada or in the UK or wherever, I don't care what country you look at, you ask anybody, are you happy with the educational quality of your education system? No, nobody's happy with it. And yet when it's convenient for them, they'll just throw it in your face that you didn't go through that bullshit process. Well, why would you waste your time doing that shit?
I mean, and my wife's actually working on her master's, and seeing what she goes through, she's been at this for years, going from from the associates all the way to the masters, and that's a lot of years. That's at least 4 or 5 years if you're not doing it hardcore. And if you have to take more time to work and take smaller class or 1 or 2 classes, that takes even longer to get. like I said, I'm retired. I'm 38 years old. I've been retired for like, I don't know, the last 6, 7 years or something like that. I can't remember. But I don't sleep at night. I was wounded in Afghanistan. I got really messed up out there. I can't sleep at night. That's like, that's like no for me. Like my body will not shut down. It's more like my body gets an adrenaline of coffee in its system once it hits like 9, 10 o'clock at night. That's why when you see me posting stuff, it's always at night. I do it during the day and stuff like that because I have to take care of my kids and stuff. But at night, that's when I do most of my thinking. That's when I do most of my researching and everything like that. And I'm alone and I'm able to do it. But that's at least from 9, 10 o'clock at night to about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, I want you to think about it. 9 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning, that's all I'm doing. That means I'm constantly gaining knowledge. I read a 400, 500, 600 page book in a matter of maybe 4 or 5 days. I can read. I've read that some people don't read no more than 12 books a year. I'm already past that.
Yeah.
And I have these tabs.
So you've been doing that for 7 years.
Well, I'm not gonna say I haven't been reading books for 7 years. My first few years was documentaries and YouTube videos and stuff like that.
But you've been interested in and following, trying to learn about all of this fascinating information for a long time. Like if you had an old man that you had to go and get a paper signed, you'd have a degree. That's the only difference. You don't have this old white-haired white dude. That's literally the only difference, because you're actually being able to self-direct your studies, which is what doctorate level students do. Like you're already doing the exact process that a doctoral student is going to do. So, people can piss on that all they want, but they're out to lunch.
And I'll pay for it. No, but I'm glad you said that because it makes me feel good because there's I'm very, very passionate about what I do. Like my wife would tell anybody, once I sink my teeth into something, that's it. My passion is it. I used to play video games. I played video games from 1987 till probably about 2 years ago. I completely stopped really. I'm not gonna say I completely stopped, but I almost at a point where I don't even touch my console or controller anymore. I did that because that was my way to get out of certain things and process my brain in different ways because of what happened to me and stuff. Now that I got to the point where I'm reading, all that information is stuck here. Like when I first started my podcast, I was nervous. I had to, write down what I wanted to say, cut pieces out, edit, redo things. Now I'm shocked how fluent I am with you. Like I know I get to the point where I just start talking and man, I can go hours for this because this is my passion. Like when I read, Eric von Daniken's book, and he had the same questions that I had, or I had the same questions he had, I'm sorry. It made me realize that, okay, not everything is aliens, but some part of it is. And we have to research that. But just because there's part of the aliens, we can't take away the motivation, dedication that these hunters and gatherers had to bring us to where we're at today. Because obviously, if you read the text, the Anunnaki thought we were smart enough, but we weren't that smart on their level. And if you think about that, they were supposed to be created. Their creation started before us. In some cases, if you read Sitchin, millions of years before us. And if I was to use the technology that I have today at 2022, okay, and to think that the Anunnaki is million years ahead of me, my question would always be like, why would they want to come to Earth to get gold if there's asteroids and probably other planets that are closer that have this resource for their planet? Why? And I'm gonna bring this up. Many people know that the reason why the Anunnaki came to Earth is because, according to Sitchin, because of to mine gold. What a lot of people forget is that, and they don't ask this question. This is the question I ask. Elelu and Anu had a fight on planet Nibiru. according to Sitchin. And Alelu got kicked out or banned or whatever, and he went to planet Earth. That's what it's according to Sitchin. When he came to Earth, he found gold. Eventually, he told Anu back on planet Nibiru, "Hey, we have gold on this planet, or I'm on this planet. We have gold here. I'm telling you." And then eventually, can I come back to Nibiru and be part of the people of the group? And Anu eventually agreed to it. And Anu sent his son Inky to the planet. Now, from what I understand, Nibiru orbits our sun every 3,600 years. So that means the first time Alelo did, how long was he on that planet before he even let, Anu know that there was gold on the planet? Then my next question is if you needed gold for your planet for that long, why did you wait to make a move when you kicked somebody out from your planet and they found gold? What was you doing before that? Because obviously, like you said, the technology, all this, we can probe planets today in 2022. We can find that, we know today what planets have gold, what planet have diamonds, and all this stuff. If the Anunnaki needed gold for their planet, when you think that the last two things that will happen would be two people fighting over kingship over a planet that may not even be there in the next 1,000 years,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of things that just don't add up in Sitchin's story. But I mean, ultimately, it is just a story because he doesn't give us any evidence.
Right.
So it's a nice story, but it's not science. But yet, we also can't just say he was a liar or he was completely wrong, because some of the things that he's saying are actually very productive in terms of, if you take some of these things and start drilling into it, you'll get to some truths that maybe he didn't notice, or maybe he misinterpreted, or whatever. But he was on a track that that I don't know if we would have got to without him. Like, if he hadn't mentioned Nibiru, would anybody care about Nibiru? Even if we, the most stuff that we know about it is, personally, I think he's got it a little bit backwards, but it's very fascinating. And I think that bringing up these things that, even if we don't really know, we're going to take our best guess at, and if we can include that evidence, then people who come along later will be able to take your book that you're going to write, or take my book that I've written. And I hope that in 10 or 20 years, somebody reads that book and goes, "Oh, well, wait a minute here. This isn't right. And here's why. And here's the actual thing," and comes to a different conclusion, because that's what science is all about. And that's what I think that's really the ultimate goal of humanity, is to learn. And the only way that we're going to learn is to look at our mistakes and correct them.
I agree. I think it would be more disrespectful to Sitchin just to believe everything he said because of the information he had at that time he used. I think it would be disrespectful if you didn't carry on. If you're a fan of his and admire him, if you didn't carry on his legacy and continue to research and find the information that he was looking for. He only told you what he told people what he thought. When I write my articles and do my podcast and write my books, I only use the information that I'm given or I'm exposed to. And I never try to make a claim, because you make that claim today, 20 years, like you said, from now, somebody says, well, that's wrong, then nobody's going to want to, then your book will eventually start falling down. In this case, Sitchin has so much good information that I don't think any of his information will totally be debunked, because there's no way you can debunk all his information, because some of his stuff is actually backed up by science and other stuff. And that's another thing. Science, from what I understand, is only as good as the person that's presenting that science. And in this case, I know Sitchin used some family relatives from NASA and stuff like that. And that's the only reason why I say that, because some people would say Sitchin's science was incorrect, but there are some parts that he used that came from friends and family that worked in these scientific areas like NASA or uh, anthropology and stuff like that. He took information from those people. And that's why I always tell people, you know, just because he wrote something in 1976 or whatever is not, doesn't mean it's the same thing today. You have to be able to read it and learn which one. Like a lot, when I read a book, I tab it. Most people don't do that. Most people, they'll read a book, they'll read from cover to cover, and that's it. They don't. There's nothing else in between that. They read, that's it, and that's it. I have to know everything that I'm reading, even if it's if you tell me if there's a word that I don't understand. I put the book down and search it on my phone. I mean, I literally look up the definition. Then I go read what I read again, and then and sometimes I have to go ahead and research, or research every word that was used in that sentence just to make sure I understand what they were saying, because you have to do that. You know, people will use definitions to fit their narrative, and that's fine. But don't forget that there are other definitions, and if somebody uses that other definition, and guess what? Sometimes things just come out the way it is. You're either right or you're wrong, and it's proven by the evidence that's presented.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it is interesting. I mean, I think that, you know, having the ability to research is such an important tool. Like, man, the tools that we have at our fingertips, I don't know if anyone has in our past has ever had this. They might have. I mean, maybe there was an advanced civilization a million years ago that had an internet that was even better than ours. We don't know for sure or not, but it's been a long time since there has been any mechanism for the type of understanding and information gathering that we have right at our fingertips. And you know, to me, that's truly amazing. And I thank science for that, and I thank God for that. So, you know, it's both, because we can't really do it without one or the other. Everything is science, but if you leave the human spirit out of it, then you got no reason for science. So yeah, I think this has been fascinating. Okay. So hey, so thanks, Tyrone, for joining us today. This has been really awesome, and thank you also for letting me come onto your channel as well. And you know, I'm really looking forward to future collaborations, and it's going to be great. So thank you very much. We'll see everybody later.
Thank you.